Yeah,
If they're both
Nate
hurt,
Herbig.
it'll be the Tesla stock swinging in and taking over that position. No, if they're both healthy, Isaac Sayamalo will be a right guard. I do not think he's going to be supplanted by anyone this year unless he gets hurt again, which we cannot dismiss because, unfortunately, he's becoming a questionable player with his ability to stay on the field. Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. McMullen and McDonald hanging with you. Smash that like button because Jeff Kerr is right. The former undersized offensive lineman hops aboard Birds 365. How's your off season going, JK?
Probably a lot better than a lot of all seasons around the NFL. It's not going better than the Eagles, I'll say that. I don't think the Eagles missed on too many opportunities this offseason.
That's fair to say, except maybe the personnel department. What's going on with the personnel department in Philadelphia, Jeff? You and I have been around this league for a little while. You rarely see this type of movement when a GM isn't fired. Here, the GM is there. You usually have a semblance of continuity. Everybody's fleeing the ship of this organization that keeps me making good moves. Are we making too much of it? Or is it just the rest of the league likes the Eagles employees so much they have to have them?
I think it's a combination of both. This is something Ocean Casino should really get into here. When Howie Roseman and Tom Donahoe had the whole blow up last year on draft night, Ocean Casino should have put out like a live bet. Will Tom Donahoe be on the Eagles at the end of 2022? Plus 150 for yes and minus 150 for no. And if you took no, you would have won. So, between that and Andy Weidel leaving, I wasn't surprised by that. What I was surprised of is the Eagles really couldn't give him the assistant GM title. Just say, hey, look, here's a bump up in salary. Here's a bump up in title. No, he's going over to Pittsburgh. And I think it's a testament of what the Eagles have built in their scouting department, obviously with guys like Brandon Brown and Ian Cunningham. I mean, they lost so many people, but at the same time, you're thinking to yourself, well, why are all these people leaving? Are these people want promotions, or is the Eagles front office actually good, or do they just want to get away from Howie Roseman, or, Howie Roseman has too much power? It might be a combination of all three.
But let me play, before you jump in, Jody, sorry. Let me play devil's advocate here. Even if you want to give Andy Weidel the assistant GM job, and who knows, we'll see what they do. Maybe they give that title out. Maybe Brandon Hunt's the assistant GM here. Who knows? We'll see. If you wanted to keep Andy Weidel, why are you firing his brother? And why are you pushing his mentor out the door if you were trying to keep him?
Yeah, it didn't seem like they wanted to put up much of a fight to keep Andy Weidel. Yeah, I agree. Why would you fire his brother? Like, what are you just trying to get rid of all the hires you made from that Joe Douglas regime? And because Andy Weidel came when Joe Douglas came, and I like the Weidel hire probably as much as I like the Douglas hire when they got him from Baltimore. So I'm thinking, okay, Andy Weidel might be the future successor to Howie Roseman, or he's going to have a big role in that front office, and he did. But you're right, John. Like, you get rid of his mentor. You get rid of, I always forget Andy Weidel's brother's name, John.
Casey.
Weidel. Thank you. And so you're getting rid of him. Now, all of a sudden, you're Andy Weidel. You're thinking, okay, am I next? Do they want me to be next? Do they want me to get a promotion elsewhere? So if you're Andy Weidel, you got to be thinking to yourself, okay, what's the best move for me? Well, it obviously was Pittsburgh. He didn't get the GM job. That's fine. They went internal. But in a way, Pittsburgh, I don't want to say it was an internal move that Andy Weidel went back to Pittsburgh, but he was with that organization once upon a time, back when Cordell Stewart was quarterback. So in a way, they kind of kept it in the family.
And as John said, Omar Khan, the guy that they hired under their previous general manager, was pretty much a business guy. So maybe there's more teeth to the assistant general manager side on the personnel in the way Pittsburgh's going to structure it. Maybe that was something that Andy Weidel was made a key in his decision as to whether he was going to jump from one organization to the other and what seems to be a pretty lateral move. All right, let's take it on to the field, JK. We have not had you on since the Eagles had their last big signing, which was getting James Bradberry after he was released by the Giants. I was beating the drums pretty good for this guy. I still think he's a top-notch cornerback. These kind of guys don't come available at this time of year. The Giants were trying to get something in exchange for him, finally had to give up hope, but the rest of the National Football League said, we know you're going to cut him, so why would we trade you anything for him? We'll wait till he gets cut. Exactly what happened. Eagles end up as his selection, signs a market value contract, not above, not below, right at about market value, at least per my evaluation. Got a chance to talk to all the available media yesterday. Seems like a thoughtful guy, a little underspoken, but I think that's a good balance between he and Darius Slay. We haven't had a chance to talk to you since Bradberry inked his Eagle deal. How big an addition is this for the Birds in your eyes?
A needed addition. They needed this guy, bottom line. And I thought they were going to go a little bit of a cheaper route than James Bradberry. I thought maybe they go after an Xavier Rhodes or someone who was familiar with Jonathan Gannon in the past. But this was the best signing they could make out of the cornerback market. They waited for this guy to be released. Give credit to Howie Roseman. Give credit to that front office. Give credit to Darius Slay. They pounced. And I always thought it was kind of interesting when Darius Slay was kind of hinting. You could tell he was pushing for James Bradberry just by his social media activity. Like, it's get this guy in here. I want this guy in here. I want this guy as my number 2. And I like it on the sense last year, remember we were talking about who's going to be their cornerback 2? Who's it going to be? All throughout the summer. And then they signed Steven Nelson. You're like, okay, this isn't bad. This is a proven player. No, you got a proven player now. You got a guy who has the potential. I mean, he's shown he's a cornerback 1. He was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. Him and Slay are still the only defensive backs with 80 passes defense since Bradberry's entered the league in 2016. I think Bradberry's the first cornerback in at least 15 years to have his first 6 seasons where he's had over 8 or 9 passes defense every season. So you know this guy is going to make plays for you. And with Darius,
we lose Jeff? Jody, did you lose him?
Seems like he's a little frozen.
Low frozen. Tone, could you bring Jeff down, bring him back up? Yeah, you know, Pat Leonard, we had Pat on. He made me feel better about James Bradberry because he had mentioned he was playing through that nagging injury, Jody. And, you know, I always say that with Baker Mayfield. You fight through things. Coaches respect that. Now, from the Giants' perspective, they had to move on from the salary cap perspective. But if the Eagles, and Jeff is back, if the Eagles get the James Bradberry of 2020, then you're really talking about something potentially special with not only Bradberry and Slay, but also Avonte Maddox. And we got a chance to talk to Jonathan Gannon for a while yesterday, Jeff, both in public and behind the scenes. Avonte's not moving, so you can shut down that safety stuff. The Eagles think they have 3 really, really good corners, and I agree with them.
I wouldn't move Avonte Maddox either. I like how Jonathan Gannon's doing that. Don't move your one of the best slot cornerbacks in football, which is what Avonte Maddox is now, to strengthen a position, and you might weaken both at the same time. Marcus Epps is perfectly fine being the starting safety on this football team this year if they choose to go that route. I'm a little skeptical about Anthony Harris, but I was more in favor of them bringing him back than I was Rodney McLeod. So if they do roll with a K'von Wallace, Marcus Epps, Anthony Harris safety trio, I'm for that because of what their cornerback situation is. You have Darius Slay, you have James Bradberry, you have Avonte Maddox. Zach McPherson being your number 4 is definitely not the worst thing in the world.
And according to Jonathan Gannon yesterday, at least what I heard, they're perfectly fine at safety. They're good at safety. He really likes his safety room, the flexibility of the safety, the talent of the safety. He was in full pump up my guys mode with the safety room yesterday. I'm not sure if he believes everything he was saying, but he was putting it out there for public consumption. We'll see if the Eagles reach out and try and grab another safety. All right, so they're not moving Avonte Maddox, which means they only have what? 12 other cornerbacks to consider to move to the safety position because they got 13 of them on the roster right now. At some point, isn't somebody going to be moved to the safety? One of you two guys?
Which one though? Is Tay Gallen or Kerry Vincent? Can they play safety, John? They don't really look like safeties to me.
I guess the answer to that would be what type of safety? I guess the old school safety, no. But now the safety position is like everything else has become more about coverage. So in a lot of ways, maybe Tay Gallen's got the length. He's a player. Jody's right when he says, for public consumption, Jonathan's fired up about the safety position. There's a public and there's a private. The Eagles are legitimately fired up about Marcus Epps. You can disagree. And I'm talking to listeners, anybody, you can disagree. They really believe in Marcus Epps. That's legit. Everybody else, I think that's more the pump up for public consumption Jody was talking about. So maybe they do add a safety at some point if things break the right way, but it's not going to be to replace Marcus Epps. It's going to be to replace Anthony Harris or K'von Wallace. Is that good enough? I don't know, but I will say this. If you have everything else, and they seem to have everything else, they now have linebackers. We're talking about depth for the first time in history, it seems, at linebacker. Certainly the first time in 20 years. The defensive line can come out in waves. I don't know if they have the best cornerback trio, but they have a top 5 cornerback trio on paper. I think that's fair to say. You can't have everything, and maybe that's where they're given a little bit, that second safety position. They have confidence in one guy, and, maybe you have competition. And if K'von Wallace, if all of a sudden the light comes on, who knows? Maybe you get some youth and go about it that way. But you can't have a Pro Bowler at every position.
No, you can. And if you do, then Howie Roseman is even a bigger magician of the salary cap than we imagine. But maybe the Pro Bowler is going to be Marcus Epps. John, do you think the skepticism comes with Epps? Because I'm trying to remember correctly. Wasn't he the guy who was covering Metcalf on like that third and
yes,
it was that third and long? And I think that was his rookie year and he was barely playing. So I'm like, Marcus Epps, I'm like, that's who you got on DK Metcalf? That's a little unfair to Marcus Epps. And
yeah, well, I mean, Jody and I talk about this all the time, and I talk about it with TJ Edwards and pedigree. He was a 6th-round pick. He was picked up on waivers. It was almost a trade. The Vikings wanted Andrew Sendejo back. They had drafted Marcus Epps. Zimmer likes veteran players, loved Sendejo. Needed a spot. They waived him. The Eagles picked him up. I was talking to somebody in the Vikings personnel department who raved about Marcus Epps, but he was a 6th-round pick and he was a walk-on. But all he kept talking about was how instinctive he was in coverage. And he's got a chance to be something. Now, down the line, but here we are down the line. Just because you're a 6th-round pick, just because you're on waivers early in your career, doesn't mean the book is closed on you. So I think it's more of, if the Eagles bring in Chuck Clark, people want Clark. He was a 6th-round pick, but now he's established, right? And they're saying, bring in Clark. Maybe you already have Clark.
I hate to tell people this. I don't think the Ravens are giving up Chuck Clark. They just signed Kyle Fuller yesterday. I think they're totally set on just loading up at cornerback and safety because of how bad that pass defense was last year.
Yeah, Clark probably not available, and that was one of the guys whose name I threw out very early on. As soon as the draft came down, he might be a guy they could try and get their hands on, but I'm with you, Jeff. I think it's less likely now. Here would be my question about the Eagles in the safety position. I know we're spending a lot of time on safety here, but it is the most debatable position for me right now on the Philadelphia Eagles. If K'von Wallace is going to open eyes, to use your phrase, John, the light comes on for Wallace. Epps, to me, is more of a free than strong safety. K'von Wallace, to me, is more of a free than a strong safety. If Anthony Harris is going to be the odd man out, which of those two guys do you think is more likely to be the guy who's going to be up in the box more often and play that strong safety role. I know everything in the NFL, specifically listening to Jonathan Gannon yesterday, it's all about fluidity. It's all about being multiple. It's all about having guys who can do different things on any given play. But maybe I'm being a little old school here. Out of Wallace and or Marcus Epps, which would you rather have manning the strong safety position the most?
I think Marcus Epps could do it, but I think K'von Wallace has the potential to do it. And I remember when K'von Wallace was coming out of Clemson, everybody said he was a hard hitter, he was a good tackler. I haven't seen that in his NFL career thus far. I know it's only been 2 years, but I think K'von Wallace could thrive in that role if you give him the opportunity. And that might be the guy. I mean, I think Marcus Epps could easily do it, but I like to see him in coverage more because that's what he is. He's a coverage guy. But I could see K'von Wallace really thriving in there as that extra blitzer in the box, or, you put him in the box and you let him go to work. I feel like the best way for safeties to succeed in this league, at least early on, especially when you got guys like Brian Dawkins and Ed Reed, who ended up becoming Hall of Famers, you put them in the box and you let them use their biggest strength, and then the coverage skills eventually come. And why not have K'von Wallace blitz? Why not have him try to stop the run? If I remember correctly, his scouting reports were he was a hard hitter and a good tackler. Well, I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it now.
Yeah, no, I think, and again, we're not talking Malcolm Jenkins here, to say the least, but I think K'von is the closest thing to what Jody's talking about that the Eagles have as a traditional box safety. They don't have one, is right. The short, but he's the closest thing they have. And Marcus Epps is probably, not probably. I think he's their best safety, certainly their best center fielder, so to speak. So you want to keep him in what he does best, and then sort of roll the dice whether it's going to be. The problem is Anthony Harris is a center fielder as well. Always in Minnesota when he was going to Pro Bowls, he was the free safety, and Harrison Smith was, the box safety. So everybody sort of is a little bit redundant, but yeah, K'von's the one guy that in theory is supposed to be able to play in the box, but I haven't seen that yet. And here I've thrown some out of the box things. You have Kaiser White, you have Jacoby Stevens, who people have forgotten about, played safety at LSU. Jonathan Gannon is very, and I know it's hard for people to understand this because he didn't have a lot of bullets. He's open-minded. So if he goes into training camp and he says, I have Nakobe Dean and TJ Edwards, maybe I can play a Kaiser White in the box and do it that way as sort of a hybrid safety. Who knows what Jacoby Stevens becomes, but just because they said we're turning him into a linebacker because he was a big safety, maybe they say, hey, we got linebackers. Let's turn him back into a big safety, a box safety. So there are some options that they could go. But as far as the players we think about, K'von Wallace is the closest thing they have to a box safety, but he's not, Malcolm Jenkins, to say the least.
It's hard to really compare anybody to Malcolm Jenkins at this point. I was actually thinking yesterday, John, now you bring up Malcolm Jenkins. Does Malcolm Jenkins have a shot at the Hall of Fame? Because if you look at his numbers compared to a lot of great safeties, I think he's very good, but
Eagles Hall of Fame easily. Yeah. Now when you look at Hall of Fame, and we're lucky enough to have just a ton of Hall of Fame voters on this show at times. Those guys look at all pro selections. Those guys look at all decade teams, not Pro Bowls, all pros. Malcolm, great player, but as you mentioned, Hall of very good. He's just not at that. And that's always been a position where it's kind of broken recently. It was really difficult to get into the Hall of Fame at safety, to the point where I always tell this story because I know very well the all-time interception leader, still Paul Krause, who nobody's going to recognize. Nobody's ever breaking his record. I think it's 81.
Yeah, it's
81 interceptions. Nobody's ever breaking that. It took him close to 2 decades to get in the Hall of Fame, and he was
Well, look at
8-time
Rondé Barber.
All-Pro.
I thought Rondé Barber was one of the studs of that Tampa Bay defense. They made sure they got Derek Brooks in, John Lynch, and Warren Sapp, all those guys. But Rondé Barber's the big play guy on that defense. 40 sacks, 40 picks, nothing. He's still not in yet. So I don't know when they're going to do that. I've still been advocating for Seth Joyner to get in, and it's the only player in NFL history with 50 sacks and 20 interceptions and nothing. So it's tough to get in.
JK, I want to jump back over to the offense with you, if that works. We've kicked this guy's name around a lot over the last couple of weeks here on Birds 365, and that's Isaac Sayamalo, who is coming back from an injury. That's unfortunately becoming part of the overall description of Isaac Sayamalo, coming back from injury a little too often. But I think he's just going to get plugged in to the right guard position this year, even though it's not his most natural position. They're not moving Dickerson. Isaac coming back, I think, is your right guard. The Eagles have flexibility on that offensive line, have depth on that offensive line. People have thought about Isaac Sayamalo going somewhere in a potential trade, or maybe Isaac Sayamalo even becoming a cap casualty. I don't buy any of it. I think Isaac Sayamalo is going to be the right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. And if he stays healthy, he's not coming off the field. Is Isaac Sayamalo going to be an Eagles starting lineup week 1 when the season gets underway?
I wouldn't sleep on Jack Driscoll taking that job from him.
All right, you're another one.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it.
Guys are just wrong. Isaac Sayamalo will be the Eagles' right guard, and if he stays healthy, he'll be there all year long.
I mean, I think Isaac Sayamalo gets the first crack at it. The best part about Jack Driscoll is you can put him at guard, you can put him at tackle, but I think the Eagles might have uncovered something with Jack Driscoll at guard. Just one of those guys you thought he was going to be a tackle in the NFL. They gave him an opportunity. They were pretty good when Jack Driscoll was in that lineup last year, and they did miss Jack Driscoll when he was hurt. So it's going to be tough. And, by the way, Jack Driscoll is a lot cheaper to.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think we lost Jeff. Try to put him down and bring him back up again, Tone. He's right. The Eagles really like Jack Driscoll, and he would be cheaper. But here's my question, and I'll throw to you, Jody. Isaac might start week 1. Jack might start by week 8. Who's starting week 17, week 18? Because they both always get hurt. That might be the real question.
That's a fair question.
You'll have Nate Herbert anymore either.
Yeah,
if they're both hurt, it'll be the Tesla stock swinging in and taking over that position. No, if they're both healthy, Isaac Sayamalo will be a right guard. I do not think he's going to be supplanted by anyone this year unless he gets hurt again, which we cannot dismiss because, unfortunately, he's becoming a questionable player with his ability to stay on the field.
What about Cam Jurgens? Could he play some right guard?
I don't think they want him to play right. I really don't. I think Cam Jurgens is they kind of know, I think, this is it for Jason Kelce. Now, maybe he plays, maybe he stays healthy and maybe plays at an all-pro level again and he changes his mind. But I think the working plan is this is it for Jason Kelce. And, they wanted to get Cam Jurgens. They know, as Jody said, they don't want to move Landon Dickerson now because they saw Landon and Jordan together and they're like, all right, we got something with that. So I think they're right. They don't want to mess with that. So there's no more Landon Dickerson at center. And they want, I think this might be a mistake, to be honest, but they want to sort of try to duplicate the athleticism of Jason Kelce. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to go. We'll see if Cam develops. It's very hard to imagine anybody being another Jason Kelce, but I think that's the plan on paper. And the last thing you want to do is mess with a guy and have him wasting time at right guard. They have so many options at right guard. I don't think they're going to go that route unless, once you get to the season, if the injuries start piling up, sometimes you have to do stuff when you don't have a 90-man off-season roster. But Isaac's interesting because of this reason. He is very expensive per guard. He's only played 9 games in 2 seasons. So he's got this injury history, and people are trying to trade him for Jesse Bates and trade him, but, you know, other teams, he's a really good player when he's healthy. The problem is he hasn't been healthy, and he's coming off a Lisfranc injury, which is pretty significant, especially for a 300-pound guy. I don't think anybody's going to be banging down their door to pay Isaac Sayamalo, not seeing if he's healthy. So I don't think he's as tradable as maybe people might think. And then it makes it a difficult decision because if the Eagles want to make room for Jack Driscoll, and they do like Jack Driscoll, Jeff is right, you might have to make that difficult decision because you don't want to pay a backup what you're paying Isaac Sayamalo.
Right. And if Isaac's not going to sit on the bench making the kind of money he is. I just don't believe that's going to happen. And here's the other thing that I would keep in mind on realignment with the Eagles offensive line due to injuries. Let's say you move Driscoll into guard. And Jeff said earlier, he's a talented player in that they thought he was going to be a tackle, looked at him at guard, looked good at guard. Damn, this guy can play guard. We could use him at either tackle or guard. What happens if you move him into guard, replace Sayamalo, he gets the job over Sayamalo, week 2, another oft-injured player on the Eagles offensive line by the name of Lane Johnson goes down for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Now what do? You move Driscoll back out to right tackle? Are you plugging in someone else at right tackle? I think the Eagles' second best right tackle right now is Driscoll. So if you're moving him in the guard, what happens if you have a need back out at tackle? What do you do with Driscoll then, boys?
Well, I would say, and Jeff, you can jump in. I would say the Eagles' second best right tackle is Jordan Mailata, and they would move Jordan to right tackle and put Andre Dillard to left tackle.
Really?
As long as they have,
You
as long as they have
left tackle and move to the right side to fill in for a couple weeks on an injury.
It's what they did last year. It's what they did last year.
Well, no, Andre Dillard can't play right tackle. He compares it to writing with your left hand. So
right.
it's I would move Mailata over too and just play Dillard. They got depth at tackle. I just don't see Andre Dillard going anywhere. I don't.
Now, that's one of the reasons I think Andre is more valuable than people think, because typically the thought process is if you're a backup in this league, you have to play multiple positions, and that's normally right. You have to have versatility. And people are saying, well, the Eagles got to trade Andre Dillard because he can't do anything else. He can't be a backup. Well, the versatility of Jordan Mailata enables them to keep Andre Dillard because he has value. And they know he can play left tackle, at least to an acceptable level. And they know Jordan has no problem moving over to right tackle. He doesn't complain. He just does it. So it's a little bit of a luxury that they have that typically teams don't have. So it is kind of unique for the Eagles in that Eagles fans at least should wake up every day and thank what for whatever your deity is for Jordan Mailata, because not only is he a great player as he turned into a great player, he also doesn't seem to know he's a great player, and he keeps acting like he's not a great player. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Whereas, remember Jason Peters? They finally convinced him to move to right guard. Right? Who was the left tackle? I'm forgetting. It was Andre.
It was Andre Dillard.
Yeah, they dropped. So they finally convinced Jason Peters to move to right guard. Then the injury happens, and they said, well, we'll just move Jason Peters back to left tackle, which he wanted to do anyway.
Right.
But anybody who ever met Jason's like, nope, not doing that.
If there was ever a day I would love to be in the NovaCare complex, in the front office, was the day they called Jason Peters in and asked him to play tackle again. I think he would have like that nanosecond face at Roseman.
It's awesome. I used to joke that the Eagles flow chart, everybody thinks it's Jeffrey Lurie and then Howie Roseman. And at the height of Jason Peters, I think Jason was ahead of Howie Roseman. He did whatever the hell he wanted to do, and everybody got out of his way.
Hey,
Jordan's
whoa.
like,
I just thought of something, John. Could Jason Peters be up for one of the executive positions in the Eagles front office? Seeing as he had that kind of gravitas before, just go ahead and give him an office and give him a title.
Yeah, I'm surprised Jeffrey loved him.
Coach Emeritus.
He still wants to play, I assume,
He's a free agent, 40-year-old free. He always said he wanted to play till he's 40. There he is.
But it is a luxury to have a player as good as Jordan Mailata has turned into, who isn't a prima donna, and say, "Oh, I'll go play right tackle." It's interesting, and it doesn't happen very often.
I think they should reward Jordan Mailata for his faith and give him the ball at the goal line once.
That would set Philadelphia on fire.
They 2017. That's all. I swear, Doug was messing with people.
They were talking about that since they saw Jordan's rugby highlights, but I wouldn't count on that.
But it hasn't happened yet. So the biggest reason not to do it is you got to put Dillard in at left tackle. They hand him the ball. No, I want my lot of blocking at left tackle every single play. I don't want to move it over to right tackle, as you guys have attempted to do here if Lane Johnson goes down. No, I want to leave Dickerson and Mailata on that side of the field every single snap, if both healthy for the entire year. That's a true strength of the Philadelphia Eagles, the left side of their line. If I didn't have to mess with it, I wouldn't mess with it. I'd just plug those guys in and run every single play from now until the end of the season. All right, end of the season is where I want to go last with you, Jeff Kerr. Expectations have been ratcheted up for the Philadelphia Eagles because of the offseason they've had, the moves that they've made. Some people have already said they've surpassed the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East. I certainly believe if you're just comping their two off seasons, the Eagles off season is much better than the Cowboys off season. Is that enough to say they're going to beat the Cowboys for the division this year, Jeff?
To beat the Cowboys in the division, you have to actually beat them on the football field, which they have not shown they are close to doing yet. But again, week 6 is going to be the key for them. I think they are as good as the Dallas Cowboys. I think they can beat the Dallas Cowboys, but they have to do it. And I actually came out with my Eagles win prediction the day James Bradberry signed. It was sent in to CBS, and I have him at 12-5. I'll still keep them at 12-5. I think that this team is a 12-win football team. They're a very good football team. They're a very deep football team. I think Dallas losing La'el Collins is going to be huge for them. I think Ezekiel Elliott's decline is massive because he keeps getting worse every year. And for some reason, Dallas doesn't play the better running back in Tony Pollard. So, as long as the Joneses and Mike McCarthy stay stubborn. Oh, by the way, I think Nick Sirianni is already on his way to becoming a better coach than Mike McCarthy. I'll say the Eagles and Dallas Cowboys split this year, but I do think that the Eagles are right there with them. And they just have to beat them on the football field. They have to take care of business at week 6 and show the Cowboys, hey, you are not winning this division 2 years in a row. We're going to keep that dubious streak of we haven't had a repeat division winner in the NFC East since.
Yeah, that's amazing. 17 years? I'll leave you with this, Jeff. You said 12 wins. I can't believe I didn't ask you this yet. Got to be, if you have them at 12 wins now, it would have had to been, 15 if the Eagles were able to get Nick Foles back?
Oh, 17. Come on. You guys know me by now. I got a Nick Foles poster back here. So, Nick Foles is my idol. I don't want to ever see him in an Eagles uniform again. I want to leave it as it is. But Nick Foles, 17-0. Let's go.
Yeah, remember, week 11, Eagles in Indianapolis. It could be the Eagles against Nick Foles. That would make some Eagle fans in this town stone cold crazy. Jeff Kerr, always a pleasure. Thanks for hopping on with us, brother. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Thanks,
Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, one of their top NFL writers who's always got an Eagle slant to what he does. That's why we bring him on the Birds 365 to get his Eagle slant. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. Next hour, we got another good one. EJ Smith of the Inquirer going to hop aboard with us. We'll keep the Eagle talk going here on Birds 365.